So, hello everyone. For those who don't know me, my name's Rhona. And when Stuart asked me to share a few thoughts on Nehemiah, my first thought was like, I wished I had taken notes. But I've been able to listen to them again, and all the talks have really been good, and they've made me reflect on my own journey so far and where God has led me and guided me in the last few years. So as Stuart said, just to give you a bit of background, this time last year I was in Falkirk, leading the youth ministry there in Falkirk Vineyard, and just this time last year I just felt a bit unrest in my spirit, and I couldn't explain why. I wasn't too sure what was going on. And then a few weeks later, my friend who I was renting the house from, they phoned me and saying, we're really sorry, but we're needing to sell our house. And so that made me realise that I needed to look elsewhere. They offered me to buy the house, but I couldn't afford to buy at that time. So that meant I was needing to look at places to rent or maybe even to buy. I remember putting an offer in a flat, but that fell through. I didn't get it. And then because I was working at the University of Stirling, I was working in the student hub, I just thought, just come over to Stirling and just see what lies ahead. So I did. So I moved over this time in July last year, and I stepped back from youth ministry, and I started coming along to Valley in October and November time. And towards the end of 2025, something unexpected happened, and I thought the best thing to do was to just stop coming to Valley. But the community that had started to form before that reached out to me, and I really sensed a real care, and they sent me texts and words of encouragement, and that really helped me to go through that kind of journey. And so it was coming up to the Christmas holidays, and I decided just to enjoy the holidays while I'm there. I decided to go back home in Dumbarton, and I just think about what church to go to when I'm back here. And so the week before, I still didn't know what church to go to. But Jen sent me a message just to ask me if I would go on the welcome team, to which I did. And here I am today, and the rest is history. So before we started the Nehemiah series, Stuart shared a message that stuck with me. He shared 3 points, and it says, God restores, God heals, and God supplies. And when I look back over the last 8 or 9 years, I can say that I've experienced all 3 in my life. In Nehemiah, we've seen themes coming through, themes of restoration, themes of rebuilding, themes of prayer, dependence on God, community, and resilience in the face of opposition. And that opposition came in a lot of forms. So we saw mockery, we saw intimidation, and we saw discouragement. But we clearly see themes of joy and God's faithfulness. Colin also encouraged us to talk about the good things God is doing in our lives, because sharing our stories can give hope and confidence to others. And Stuart reminded us that despite everything Nehemiah faced, God remained righteous and God remained faithful. And we're called to trust both the hand and the heart of God. So that's what I want to share for you today, share a bit of my story and speak as a witness to the goodness and faithfulness of God in my life. And this year especially, I've really seen moments of God's provision. Since moving to Stirling, so that was last year, I've had 4 different jobs. I'm a qualified careers advisor, and I've always wanted to be a careers advisor. And so I was working at the student hub, and then I got offered a job as an employment coordinator, working with parents who've got a lot of barriers. And then 2 months in that job, I got a phone call from the SDS, Skills Development Scotland, offering me a fixed-term contract in East Dumbartonshire. And I'm like, well, what do? I was phoning all my friends, just wanting a bit of their wisdom, and they were working with SDS as well, and they all said just to go for it. You never know what will happen. So I went for it, even though it was a fixed term in East Dumbartonshire, so that was about 20 miles, or 40 miles in total. So a bit of travelling, but at least I got the job that I've always wanted, and so I was very grateful for that opportunity. But since it was only fixed time, fixed term, my head was getting a permanent contract. So SDS is quite good offering internal positions. So every morning I would just look and look and look about for a permanent job just near here, at least. And I remember speaking to Stuart, and I said, like, I need a permanent job. And so we met on the Tuesday, and on the Friday, there was a job vacancy came up, a permanent job in Stirling. So that's been a really answer to prayer. So I've applied. I went for the interview, bearing in mind I already went, this was my 7th interview with SDS. My first interview was in 2021. So I wasn't I went just kind of discouraged, or prepared for it, prepared the presentation, but in my mind I'm like, wow, it is what it is, and now it's in God's hands. That same night, we mentioned Women to Women. I went to Women to Women, and I think Debbie's talk, it's as if that God was speaking directly into my situation. As we heard before, she was talking about the snakes and ladders in life, and the ladders represent promotion, opportunities, peace, breakthrough, and the snakes represent setbacks, distractions, and disappointments. And she even went on to say, like, there's someone in this room that's been for an interview and maybe you're looking for promotion in your career. And I'm like, that's me. And she also said, like, God's going to use your gifts and your skills in your career. And I'm like, well, God's really speaking to me on that night. So Tuesday passed, I didn't hear anything. Wednesday, I got a phone call to say I got offered the job. So, yeah. So I've been in the job for two weeks now, and it's really been good. It's good just having a small commute, a 5-minute commute to work, and I've enjoying giving careers advice for people. So that was a big answer to prayer. My next prayer point was finding a property to buy. So I started viewing for different properties, and I saw a really nice house in the Raploch, and I couldn't get a viewing, so I just said, I'll just leave it. And 2 weeks later, this same house was still on the market, so I just phoned the agency and say, oh, what's going on? Is this house still available? And so there was a yes, this house is still available. So I arranged to view it, and I arranged to view it a second time with my mum and dad, and I put in an offer on the Wednesday, but sadly it got rejected. So I'm like, well, that's fine, I'll just continue viewing other properties. I had 2 other properties to look for, so that's fine. And so on Friday, on Good Friday, I got a phone call, a missed phone call, so I phoned up. I was in my bed, it was in the morning, and the phone, it was the agents, and they were like, well, the sellers changed their mind, they want to accept your offer. So God's provided, and so I'm hopefully be moving in soon. And just to reflect on all that God provided, it says in Ephesians 3 verse 20, now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask, think, according to the power at work within us. So we might think about something, think about our own plan, but God works in abundantly that we can think or ask. So thanks to the power within us. Life has not always been a bed of roses, as it says. There has been seasons of real pain and heartbreak, what Nehemiah might call Ono seasons, where opposition seemed to be taking its place, times where God needed to heal me from anxiety, depression, negative thinking, rejection, especially after my engagement ended, and healing from workplace bullying. Those were difficult seasons, but God didn't leave me there, and he was faithful, and he brought healing and restoration. In Nehemiah, we see the walls being rebuilt with community all around, restoring worship, restoring the word, restoring people and protecting the city. But for me, I found it hard to trust people, hard to feel joy and hard to get excited about life. I buried my heart and emotions deep down, avoiding facing them, and I found myself building unhealthy walls around my heart. And in Nehemiah chapter 1, it says that Nehemiah wept. And in verse 4 it says, I sat down and wept for some days. I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. And just to encourage you, just to allow yourself to mourn and express that pain to people that are close to you, but more importantly to God, because he will comfort you and he will give you peace in every situation. And also in verse 5, it says, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. So I've been through, like a few years ago, just struggled about all the things I mentioned, but I just want to share a quick testimony about my healing experience with the Lord. So I fast forward a few years ago. As mentioned, I moved to Falkirk and I went to Falkirk Vineyard and I was leading the youth ministry. And I feel God was working in my character during that season, but also God was addressing the pain and the hurt I was hiding. And there's a few times where I just felt confident enough to just step in faith and ask for prayer. And Falkirk Vineyard really believe in the laying of the hands and the testimony of the healing, healing praying ministry. And so I remember in a few churches after the service, I asked for prayer, and I just kind of let God kind of speak to me. And I remember having the manifestations of the Holy Spirit. So there was one day I was shaking, the one day I was falling over, one day I was kind of just crying, and hopefully the visitors at the church were maybe not wondering what was going on, but I was kind of really needing that kind of healing within my life, the past pain. And one conference, I think it was 2 years ago, I went to a conference up in Aberdeen, and they were just talking about how people just kind of dig things deep in the ground, and that was me. I was just avoiding the pain, avoiding the trauma from before, and I asked for prayer. So I went to the front, and I believe that God delivered me from everything, and God healed me emotionally and is restoring my joy again. And so we mentioned briefly about identity during the talks, and my identity isn't on my failings or disappointments. My identity isn't on my relationship status or job title. My identity is found in the love of the great and awesome God, the God of heaven, and he loves me for who I am, and I should be secure in my identity because the Creator created me, and that gives me joy. So last thing I want to share, so last year, I think this verse came up, and it was in Psalm 30, verse 11 to 12, and I just declared the psalm over me, and it says, you turn my wailing into dancing, you remove my sackcloth and clothe me with joy, that my heart may sing your praises and not be silent. Lord my God, I praise you forever. And so back in 2025, I declared that and prophesied that in my life, and this week I was reading the Bible, and I just turned to that page where I wrote it, and I declared seasons of moving forward, seasons of blessings, seasons of healing, season of dancing, season of abundance, seasons of door opening. And so this year has really been kind of those kind of prophetic words kind of coming to fruition in my life. Just before I finish, a verse from Nehemiah 6 says, this work has been done with the help of our God. All that's happened to me over the last few years, I couldn't have done it without the help of God, the Holy Spirit, and the people around me. And so God has been faithful in every season, in the rebuilding, in the waiting, in the setbacks, and God is always at work. And if you're in a season of rebuilding or opposition or uncertainty, I want to encourage you to keep trusting the hand and the heart of God, because he restores, he heals, he supplies, and he is faithful always.
Thank you again for listening. We hope it helped and encouraged you. For more information about our church, or if you'd like to know more about the gospel, please visit www.valleychurchscotland.com. Thanks again.